Hi everyone, my name is Paulina, and today we are going to talk about how to build killer real time journeys with Dynamics 365 Customer Insights Journeys. So, the formerly known module Dynamics 365 Marketing. And how are we going to do this? With triggers, so the new part and functionality we have with real time journeys. So, let's start. Customer insights, or formerly known marketing, is part of the Power Platform. And that is exactly the thing that we're going to use. So we are using everything the Power Platform offers for us. So not only the customer data platform, we're not only going to use customer journey orchestration to really create the marketing automation, the campaigns that our contacts will run through, we're of course also going to use the omni-channel approach. So instead of just sending emails, we could also use different other channels like SMS, push notification, maybe social media, and many, many more. So all of these functionalities that we see here, they are part of customer insights, and thus they are part of the Power Platform. Not only that, we can of course also use all the other topics we have on the Power Platform, like Canvas apps, Power BI, or even Power Automate, and that is exactly what we're going to look in today. So as I said, Customer Insights Journeys is the marketing automation module of the Dynamics 365 world, or even of the whole Power Platform and Dataverse. And the core of this module are the journeys. Journeys basically automate campaigns. Usually we say, this is our target audience, this is the one we want to send through our campaign. We then send the email. Maybe we wait a little before we create a task, a lead, or anything else. So the journey is basically the path that our contacts or leads should run through when we have a marketing campaign. On the left side, you see here a really simple journey that I have created. It also starts with the trigger. We send the email, we wait, and then in the end, we have a task activity. But on the right side, you can also see all the other different actions that we can use. So not only text messages or push notifications, we could even use AI-powered actions like A/B testing. We can add conditions like wait timers or wait for a specific trigger, sending people different branches in our journey based on specific attributes. We can create activities, for example, to collaborate with the sales department, like phone calls or tasks, or we can create even opportunities or leads. And most importantly, the little left thing in the corner below the connectors is the activate a custom trigger. And that's exactly what we're going to look into today in more detail. But as I said, journeys automate our campaigns. Journeys are part of customer insights, and customer insights is part of the Power Platform. So, what's behind this journey? It looks nice in the front end, and it's really easy for users to create their own journeys. But let's have a look on the back end. So, what exactly happens when we start a journey in the background? As you can see here, in the background, so in the backend of our journeys, is basically a Power Automate. So that's why Customer Insights is part of the Power Platform. When you create a new journey and when you start it, a Power Automate is created. When you create a new version of your journey, a new Power Automate is created and activated. I tried matching a little bit here the trigger and where they belong to in the Power Automate. It is a bit tricky. For example, the email is not that easy to find, but you can see there is a scheduling action also in the Power Automate that corresponds with the wait timer. And we have also a create a task, so a Dataverse action that basically creates the task in the end. So update or create record from Power Automate. And not only is the journey a Power Automate in the background, but we will also later use Power Automates within journeys. So kind of like nested Power Automates or child Power Automates flows. But before we get into this, let's have a quick look on segment or trigger based. Every one of you who has already used the outbound part of Customer Insights journeys, they know that journeys usually start with a segment. A segment is a targeted audience that we create. So we define whether we want to send it to everyone who's living in Germany, or everyone that has bought a specific product in the last 3 months. So a segment is usually predefined. Also, a segment updates every 10 to 15 minutes, always a bit depending on the performance of the system. And when we have a segment-based journey, so when we start with a specified list of contacts or leads through our journey, they can only run once through this journey. So even though they are added multiple times or they are added to a segment, they are removed and they are added again, they will only run through this journey once. Of course, unless it's a recurring journey, but basically the idea of journeys is that people can just run once through these journeys when it's a segment-based one. On the other side, we have the triggers, and these are really new for real time marketing, and I really like them. So it's my favorite new part of real time marketing because it offers us so many new functionalities. First of all, we can react in real time. So we don't have to wait for a segment to be updated or to be created, but we can react in real time and based on interactions. So we can even be a bit proactive maybe. So something happens, the customer does something, they buy something, they want to leave us, they have something in their shopping cart. So all these things can be a trigger for our journey. And of course, the best thing is we don't have to create segments anymore because then our journey always starts with a trigger. There are multiple triggers, or actually two types of triggers that we can create. On the one side, we have the so-called dataverse trigger, which means that we can also configure it kind of low code, no code in the module directly. No need for deployment in that case. And dataverse triggers can be something when a record is created or updated in our Dynamics 365. That does not have to be something from marketing or from customer insights. It can also be a quote in our sales module. It could be a case in our service model. So everything that's happening within our dataverse and within our dynamics basically can be created as a trigger. And on the other side, we have the so-called custom triggers, and these can be created with Power Automate, so what we will look into today, but they can also be created with JavaScript, C Sharp, Python, or for iOS and Android. So custom triggers are usually chosen when you want to have a trigger outside of the system, so outside of Dynamics 365. It can be, and that's usually an example that I say, that can be, for example, when the shopping cart is full of items, but the person didn't buy them. That's not something that's happening inside Dynamics 365, but that's something happening outside the system, and still it's a relevant trigger, and we can use it for our marketing campaigns. And in the next minutes, we are going to look more into these custom triggers because the interesting part are the Power Automates that we can use. So I brought I brought a few examples, let's call it like that, of when and how we can use triggers and Power Automate and customer insights. So we have, in this case, four different possibilities. On the one side, we can start a journey with a trigger. We can also trigger a trigger in the middle of a journey. We can connect multiple journeys based on triggers. So one journey ends with a specific trigger, and this trigger can, on the other side, be the start of a different journey. So people are transferred over. And of course, no use case nowadays without AI. So I also have a little AI builder trigger for you that we can also use in customer insights journeys. Okay, so we're going to start with a journey that starts with a trigger. So the use case that I want to show you, and just as an example, of course, is that we want to react on the change of the weather and send personalized messages. I had this idea a few months ago, or even a year already, I think, when I was in Istanbul and the weather was really bad and it was raining a lot, and I wanted to be on the rooftop bars and drink some nice drinks, have a look over the Bosporus. But the weather was so bad that I basically couldn't go outside, and I visited all the museums in that time. But then I received the email from Get Your Guide, and that email said, "This little rain in Istanbul will not stop you, and here's a list with all the activities that you can do while it's raining in Istanbul." I thought that was a great example of a personalized journey. So that's why I thought, can we do this in customer insights journeys? And the answer, of course, is yes. So I'm going to show you how to do this use case in customer insights journeys with Power Automate and triggers. Okay, so we are starting with the triggers, and I'm going to create a new trigger. So not Dataverse trigger, but the custom trigger. So it's the second action that we can choose here. Then we have to give it a name, we have to give it a description, and we can choose different attributes like contact or leads. So depending on who should run through it. Also, we can give different attributes, and these are attributes that we can then pass on in our journey or also in the Power Automate. You have different attributes and data types here from number, date and time, or entity reference. But that's it already. So I only want to pass on the weather condition. I click on next and ready to use. And then this one's getting ready. We will come back to this later. Then I have my Power Automate, and here I use the MSN weather trigger. You can, of course, also use a different one, but I use this one. I choose the location. In my case, I want to use it for Hamburg. Then I also have an interval, so I can also say how many minutes this should be updated. So not every minute, not in Hamburg, please. We have then the next time the contacts. So we will find all contacts in the city of Hamburg because only those we want to reach out to. And then we have the perform an unbound action. And that is basically the one that triggers the trigger in our journeys. Here I choose the trigger name. It always starts with msdin mkt underscore, then the name of the trigger, and then some random number. So let's go back to the trigger we have created because it's ready to use. And when I go here to the code snippet, there you can also find the technical name of your specific trigger. Always msdin mkt underscore trigger name underscore number. Next thing that I do is I add the weather condition. Here I get from my trigger, from the MSN trigger, I get the conditions that I want to use later for personalization. Also here I get the last updated date or last updated time, because that I have to add to the both of the timestamp parameters. And in the signal user auth ID and profile ID, I add the contact ID. So that's basically the ID of the contact that runs through the system and through the journey, of course, as well. So the journey itself, it starts with the trigger I have created previously. So I just choose the trigger here. And I don't have to do anything else there. It will run immediately once the trigger is started from the Power Automate. So once the weather has changed, the Power Automate will run and it will be added here in the journey. And in the email, I add a little personalization. So here I have the personalized or variation of my email. And depending on the weather condition, I want to also add different content. So when the weather condition equals sunny, and there I can use the weather condition parameter or attribute that I passed on in my trigger that I've previously created. So not only the contact information I can add here, but from the trigger, I get the attribute that we have added previously. It's populated with the condition from MSN weather. And when it's sunny, it should show this text. And if it returns as rainy, then it should show a different text and a different image, of course, as well. So let's discard the changes. I haven't done any of them. And with that, we have a journey, a really simple journey actually, that sends an email to contacts where the weather in Hamburg has changed. And depending on the conditions that are now in Hamburg and our weather, so maybe mostly rainy, we will have a personalized email content. So coming back to the weather condition MSN trigger, let's say it like that. Please be aware that the weather can change quite quickly. So especially in Hamburg, I had this journey live once, and I think I got about 200 emails in 2 days because the weather has changed so often. So please be aware of that in that case. But I think it easily shows how to create a journey that starts with a trigger. So the next thing we want to check is how to start a trigger from the middle of a journey. So in that case, I want to improve collaboration between sales and marketing. So not a new thing, but still it is important. And I want to send a Teams notification to the contact owner whenever a new lead is created, because my sales usually doesn't look so often in the CRM, and they are a bit lazy when it comes to checking the lists and views or dashboards. They want to be informed right away via a Teams notification that a new lead is created so they can react quickly. Also here, we will create a custom trigger with attributes. Again, we will use the perform unbound action. And we will forward data from Dataverse this time. So last time we forwarded some data via the attribute weather condition from the Power Automate. In that case, we're going to do it the other way around, and we will add some information from the journey to the Power Automate. Okay, let's go. So in this case, I have already created my trigger. It has the customer data, it has a description and a recipient, because I want to make it quite flexible. I want to reuse this Teams notification more often. I add them both as text types. Then I have my journey. It starts with a trigger. When a marketing form is submitted, we will then create a lead, and after this lead is created, we will then activate our custom trigger, where I choose my trigger. And here I map the attributes. So this is the point where we pass on data from the journey to Power Automate. I add a value for a description of my notification. And for the recipient, I add the owning user of the contact and the username, which is basically the domain name, so the email address of our contact owner, because this is the person that will receive the notification. Okay. Next thing is the Power Automate. And also here I have created the specific Power Automate. I just need to go there. It's here. And I start this Power Automate when an action is performed. So not when an unbound action is performed that I usually use within this Power Automate, but in this case when an action is performed. I have the catalog. It's always CXP for our triggers. Also the category, if you created them yourself, it's a custom category. You can see the other ones, which are default, but still it's custom. Table name is none. And for the action name, you can see all my self-made triggers. So a lot of weather triggers, but we use the send Teams notification here. The next step is now the Teams notification. Here I post as a flowbot. I post it in a chat. And in the recipient, I now add the domain name. So the username, the email address of the user and of the recipient, the value that I have passed on from the journey. So when you can see here in the dynamic values, I have all the action inputs, my MSDN MKT recipient, also of course the timestamps and profile ID that we know from before, but in that case I choose the recipient. I have then added an adaptive card for the notification, and in the text I also add my text for the description. So this one will then populate with a new lead is created for you, and that's how we can make the whole notification quite flexible. Okay, so let's test this, how it's going to look. I have to change back to the old Power Automate. Otherwise, it didn't let me run through a testing somehow. There seems to be buggy in my demo environment. But no problem, we start a test from here. And now when my flow is running, and successfully, of course, we then receive a notification in Teams. There it is. We get a card in our workflow Teams, and there it says, yay, a new lead. And also you can see, hey, a new lead is created for you. The rest, of course, is still hard-coded, let's say it like this, but that, of course, can also be created quite flexible. So in the end, it means that we have a trigger that sends a Teams notification, and because we can use these attributes and the parameters and pass them on from the journey, we can create this trigger only once, but we could use it for multiple purposes. Let's come to the next one, and we want to connect a trigger and we want to connect journeys. So the use case is following. We have one retention journey in our marketing where all contacts should run through that seem to or want to churn away. They want to leave us as a customer, they want to leave our company, and they should run through this retention journey so we can give them a new offering and tell them why they should stay being a customer for us. So this retention journey is a journey where contacts from multiple sources can run into. And one of the sources can be from a survey. So when someone reacts negatively on a survey, maybe they want to move away from us as a company, and then they should run through the retention journey. There could be also other journeys like the survey journey where people run through, but once we feel like they might leave us, then we want to send them through the retention journey. So again, we will create a trigger with attributes where we pass on information from one journey to the other. We will build two journeys, and we can also forward data for personalization. We will not use Power Automate in this case. It's actually not needed. So we will just use a trigger, one trigger, and we will create two journeys. So let's jump into the demo. And this is my trigger. So the trigger again contains my attribute, my customer data, and it also contains attribute priority, because based on the priority, I want to send people in my retention journey through different paths. It's again a custom trigger, no Dataverse trigger, really easy. I set it to ready to use so we can use it. Then we start with the survey journey. So when a survey response is created, and this is also a custom a trigger here, or a Dataverse trigger, and depending on the sentiment that's coming back from the survey answer, we want to send the contact through different branches. So I use the attribute action here. And when the sentiment from the journey or from the survey, is positive or neutral, we can send them different paths. So when it's positive, we just congratulate them. When it's neutral, there's nothing to do. But when it's negative, then we activate the custom trigger and we activate the one with add to retention journey. I select the custom trigger here, and I also map the attributes. So in that case, for a service, it's a high priority. So I added a value of high here, which is then passed on to the next journey. We then skip to the next journey. This is the retention journey where all contacts will run into. And here I just use the trigger as the beginning, so nothing else, no Power Automate here. We send the email, we wait a day, and then we have the attribute branch again. So here we now pass on the priority. So when the priority is high, we send people a different path in our journey than when the priority might be low. For high, we just call them directly and let's give them 100% discount. For medium, we just say sorry. And for low, yeah, well, let's sell them something else. And that's what it's all about. We have one trigger created really quickly, and we can then make use of this trigger and send contacts from one journey to the other and still have it quite personalized with branches or with even content in the journey itself. Okay, let's come to the last use case, the AI use case. Of course, that's always necessary and interesting. We will use the AI builder for that. So if there are any questions related to the credits for AI builders, please ask me separately, or we can discuss this via email or message. Just contact me on my blog. In that case, we will not go too much into details about the AI builder. But the use case in that case is that we want to send a welcome email with a personalized text that we have created via Gen AI. And of course, always, please, 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 always for AI text, have an approval process in place as well. We will have a look into this in our demo. So we will create a trigger again that will run in the middle of a journey, or also in the beginning of a journey, depending on what's the better use case, of course. We create a custom trigger. We will analyze the data with AI and create a text, and then we will approve the text before the email is sent out. So basically the use case is, and let's start in our um, demo, we have the custom trigger here with the customer data as contact and a text attribute, because this is where we will populate the generated AI text later. I have a super simple custom prompt that I have created with some input like first name, location, birthday, budget, or product. And these inputs we will later pre-fill with information from the contact from Dynamics. So here I have some sample data that I used for sending out or for testing my prompt. But basically, this data will later be filled with information from the contact. Next thing that I do is the Power Automate. My Power Automate always starts when a journey is set to one, because then we want to welcome our customer as a new customer in our company environment. I look for the contact that's connected to the opportunity. So here I have my parameter for the contact, our parent contact ID of the Power Automate. The next step that I do is my user. So here I look for the owner of the contact, because this owner should then later also approve my text that's created. And then I have the AI builder task or action where I choose my prompt. And here in the inputs now, I add the information from the contact or from the opportunity. So the input placeholders that you saw before will now be populated with the information from the contact and the opportunity. So it will be a very personalized text. We could also add additional contacts, but in this use case, there's no need to do so. So once the text is created via the GPT prompt, we will do the approval. So yes, approval is very important. I give it a specific title, and in the suggested text, I add the response from the trigger before or from the action before. So the output text is the one that the prompt has generated. And I assign it to the domain name, so the owner of my contact. He or she will be the one that is approving the text before it gets sent out. Then in the condition, I say when the approval is done, so when the outcome is approved by my owner or by my user, then we will post a message to a chat or channel. Also here, yeah, sorry, I have to add this as well, of course. So here I add the outcome of the approval. So the outcome of the approval, when this is approved, it will run into our true path. It will post a message to Teams, just like we saw before from our Teams notification. So we can then also see whether the text was accepted or not. And then again, we have the perform an unbound action where we add the text, so the accepted text, which will be populated in the email. We have the timestamps, and we have the signal user auth ID and the profile ID. So timestamps, here I use the modified on, and for the signal user auth ID and profile auth ID, I use the parent contact ID of the opportunity, because that's the contact that also receives the message. Again, I have to switch back to the old Power Automate to test my journey and also to test this Power Automate, because I would like to show you how this will exactly look like. So what kind of message the user will get and how it will look like to approve our GPT created text. So let's get this started. Okay, so the flow is running. It gets my contact, it gets my user, it creates the text with GPT, and it creates the approval. And once the approval is created, I will get a message in Teams again to approve my text. So I go to Teams, and here you can see I have this little notification. I received a request to approve my welcome email. And the text field is quite small here, so it's hard to read, but you can see that it's a welcome email for a new member to our club. It takes the information from my birthday, from my topic, from my budget. I just changed the name here because that's not populated correctly. And then I can click on approve. And once it's approved, then I also, as you see, I receive a message. We edit that so we can see that the following text was accepted. And this will then also be the text that is added to our email. And let's check back the Power Automate. So here we have now the yes path, the post message, the message was posted, and the perform unbound action was sent as well. So my journey starts with my trigger onboarding AI. So once the trigger is populated or triggered from Power Automate, it will start in this journey. And then in the next part, we will send the email. So here on the email, this is just really simple as an example for you. We have the text attribute as a dynamic placeholder added here. So once the approved text will be populated here, the email will be sent out with a generated AI text. And that's it for our AI builder trigger in customer insights journeys. I think there are a lot of different ideas of when and how to use this AI builder for AI use cases in marketing. I think the possibilities are endless. So if you come across some new ideas or have anything in mind what you could build with AI in customer insights journeys, then please let me know. I'm always super curious to hear about new use cases and what others are trying to do. Okay, but that's it for our use cases. I hope you got some input and some ideas of when to use these triggers. I added some information here for you again of when to use and where to use the Power Automate parameters and what to add there. So for the timestamps, you can always use the UTC now or modified on date. And for the signal user auth and profile ID, we use the contact ID, or of course, if it's a lead that runs through the journey, then a lead ID. And then there's also an item that's called binding ID. These are the journey instances. So if you have, for example, someone running multiple times through a journey, through a trigger-based journey, and you want to stop them in just one of these runs, then you can use the binding ID because that's the journey instance that the customer is using or running through, and then you can stop specific journeys based on this binding ID. So one example, of course, is the creation of a journey for event registrations, and people can register to multiple events, but they could also cancel their event registration for multiple events. So if you don't use this journey instance or binding ID here and someone cancels, they will be canceled for all the event registrations that they are running through. And that's not what you want. They just should stop running through a journey for this specific journey instance or this specific event. And that's where you can use the binding ID. So there are a few things that are important and that I want to highlight here, especially when using the custom triggers and you want to integrate them externally, then please always pay attention to security, especially if it's just a trigger, for example, that starts when a new website is opened or loaded. There are bots or anyone else who opens the email multiple times or a website multiple times. So when you don't have something in mind for security, then also the trigger will be triggered this often. So always pay attention when you add a code externally. Then triggers, especially the custom triggers, have an application lifecycle management process. So please use that. You can create triggers in your development environment, and with a deployment or a solution pipeline, deployment pipeline, you can then send them to your test or UAT environment and then in production. So you don't have to create custom triggers directly in the production. And you also don't have to use or create them every time manually again. There's no option yet for journeys or emails, for example, that we can also use in in solutions. It's not there yet, but it's announced, and we have to just have a little bit of patience. And I know this is a no-brainer, but I still say this: please test your triggers. Either directly in Power Automate, or there's also the possibility within a trigger where you can trigger this new custom trigger directly, and where you can test it and see if it works correctly. So the use cases I showed to you today are just a glance of what is possible, and there are so many more possibilities that we have here. We could create a trigger for adding people to a marketing list, for the whole event management. So for example, also social listening could be an interesting idea. When someone writes a negative review on social media, we could use this as a trigger in journeys. We could notify account responsibles. Also, we can make use of the data we have in customer insights data. So, for example, one of the profiles is updated or a threshold is met. All these things within our Dynamics 365 or outside the Dynamics 365 can be used for triggers. And that brings us to a whole new world of possibilities for customer insights journeys. And that's exactly why I like the triggers so much. They have brought a great new functionality in real time marketing. Not only that we can increase personalization, we can also improve the customer experience. We can even bring marketing and IT closer together. So, previously I said it's always good to bring marketing and sales closer together, but customer insights journeys is a classical martech tool, so we need IT for that. And with the triggers, we can bring both departments closer together and work together. And I like these triggers because we usually build kind of, I call it construction kits or building blocks here. So like the Teams notification trigger, we can build different triggers during a project, for example, and the marketing department can use them whenever they want because they can be built quite flexible. We don't need to build a trigger for every use case that comes up. We can build them so flexible, dynamic, and yeah, generalistic, let's call it like that, so they can be reused for multiple purposes, and marketing is not that dependent from the IT any longer. So that's why I really like the triggers, and I hope this presentation gave you a good information and some insights of when to use and how to use the triggers. If you have any questions, then please let me know. Visit my blog, write a comment below this video. So please engage with me. If you have ideas about other triggers, when to use them, other use cases, then please also let me know. And let's create a great exchange about the triggers and how we can really excel with them in customer insights journeys. Thank you so much, and bye bye.